My name is Judy Beatty, 32 years old. I spend most days inside boardrooms that smell like stale coffee and victory. I argue in syllables, I calendar in minutes, and I sleep with my phone face down because good news never calls after midnight. This time it wasn't midnight. It was lunch. A soft ding and a voicemail that moved like a hairline crack through drywall. Small, then spreading. Ms. Beatty, this is Regina from W. Stoke Financial. Your mortgage on Crestwood Drive is 60 days past due. As the cosigner, you are legally... I stopped listening at cosigner because I don't own so much as a birdhouse on Crestwood Drive. I called back with the voice I keep for judges and stubborn interns. There's been a mistake. I have not co-signed anything. A polite pause. We have the agreement on file, Ms. Beatty, signed by you 6 months ago. We also have a scan of your driver's license. Email it, I said, already on my feet, my untouched salad wilting like an apology I wasn't going to make. The PDF hit my inbox before I sat down. There it was, my name, my number, my signature, tilted just a hair wrong, like someone practiced on tracing paper until the ink learned my swagger, but not my hand. An amateur who studied me too closely. Of course, I whispered, lips numb. James. My little brother, baby of the family, collector of ideas, allergic to consequences. I hadn't spoken to him since the aliens hacked my crypto incident, after which I said words that closed a door and turned the deadbolt. I forwarded the PDF to Miller, my oldest friend and forensic document whisperer. He called in 5 minutes, the way only people who've seen you ugly cry in freshman year can. Judy, your signature's been impersonated. The slant's off, the pressure is inconsistent at the crossstrokes, and the ID scan's a composite. It'll hold at a glance, but it won't survive daylight. Rage went through me like a clean burn, not confusion, not grief. Rage with an index and table of contents. I drove to my parents' house through neighborhoods with perfect hedges and ugly secrets. Mom texted a heart emoji when I said, "Be there in 10." It landed on my screen like a glittered knife. They were waiting with chicken parmesan and the kind of smiles you paste on the front of a train wreck. "Judy," Mom chimed, "you never stop by anymore. Sit, eat." "I'm here for the main course," I said, laying the printed mortgage on the table. Fraud. The word did what the marinara couldn't. It silenced a room. Dad swirled his wine, buying seconds like they were on sale. James, hoodie, bravado, the usual, tilted back in his chair with that smirk he wore when he believed the universe paid him to improvise. "Don't be dramatic, Judy," Mom tried. "It was just a cosign. James needed help." "You forged my signature," I said calmly. "You copied my ID." Dad's fork hit the plate. "Your brother was drowning. And you tied a cinder block to my name." James scoffed. "It's not that deep. The bank thinks it's 300 grand deep." Silence again. Heavier, intimate. I slid the pages closer to Dad. "Here's what happens next. You go to the bank tomorrow. You confess. You remove my name from every document. You explain the ID. You tell them the truth." Mom's eyes glistened on cue. "We thought you'd understand." "I do understand," I said. "I understand I'm always your backup plan." Dad bristled. "You'd throw your family to the wolves over a signature?" "No." I stood, hearing my own heartbeat like a gavel. "You threw me first. I'm just climbing out." I gave them 24 hours. I didn't slam the door. I drove home slow because anger and speed are cousins that end up at the same funeral. Back in my apartment, I did what the living do when the dead come knocking. I made coffee and opened every account I own. Credit Karma, Experian, banks. The mortgage glared at me like a neon sign in a bad part of town. Then I scrolled and found the darker alley. 3 new credit cards, all maxed out within 6 months. An attempted personal loan for $50,000, denied only because the universe blinked. My chest got tight in that specific lawyer way where the air thins and the facts get sharper. I called Miller again. He said, "We're not treating this like a spat. We're building a case." He looped in Solstice Evans, former feds, current sledgehammer for white-collar messes. She asked for everything. PDFs, screenshots, IP logs, the first time they ever handed me keys and called it love. While my laptop uploaded the last of my panic, my phone rang. Ethan, my boyfriend, whose love language is logistics and soup. "Talk to me," he said. "They used my name, Ethan. They took my signature out for a test drive and never planned to bring it back." "I'm coming over." "No," I said gently. "I need to think like a plaintiff." A beat. "Okay, I'll stay on the line while you do." That was love to me, not flowers, not poetry. A voice that didn't argue with evidence. 2 hours later, Solstice called with a number that made the room tilt. Judy, preliminary exposure around $300,000. Someone spoofed your two-factor and touched your retirement account. Also, there were job applications submitted using your credentials, your bar number. Headshot attached. My what? Your brother applied to legal assistant jobs as you. He's building a fake version of your career. I sat very still. There are kinds of theft you can quantify in dollars. This one stole my hours. Nights I stayed in the office until the janitors learned my coffee order. It stole my becoming. Document everything, I said, more to myself than to her. Judy, Ethan murmured in my ear, eat something. After, I said, because after is a place we pretend exists. The next night, I invited my parents and James to my apartment. No rosemary lighting, no bread baskets, just a table, cold light, and chairs angled so people couldn't pretend they hadn't seen what was in front of them. They arrived late, trailing perfume and excuses. I didn't offer water. This isn't a discussion, I said, sliding a folder across. It's a record. Mom stared at the tabbed evidence like it had teeth. You're taking this too far. Miller stepped out from the hallway, professional calm like a blade. She's not taking it far enough, he said. If you don't contact the bank and the card issuers by tomorrow and confess, we will. Dad's jaw ticked. You'd really put your own mother... Stop, I said. Don't use that word like a shield. James leaned back, hoodie shadowing his eyes. You always wanted me to fail. I wanted you to stop making my success your currency. The clock on my stove clicked loud in the quiet. I gave them the same deadline, 24 hours. Confess. Undo. Return my name to me. They left with their faces arranged in grief and offense, and I watched their elevator doors close like theater curtains. It should have felt like control. It felt like standing on a cliff with the tide coming in. At 10:17 a.m. the next day, Mom texted, "We talked to the bank. It's complicated. Don't do anything rash. Keep this in the family." A photo of her cat curled next to a throw pillow followed, as if purring could notarize a crime. Rash, that ship had sailed. Miller texted, "Bank at 3. Bring everything." Solstice pinged. "Something bigger under the floorboards. Call me after." I looked at Ethan's message. "Proud of you. Dinner later?" And typed back one word. Maybe. Because when the people who taught you your name start spending it like small change, what you lose first isn't money, it's appetite. And this was only the appetizer. If part 1 was the spark, part 2 was the explosion that revealed how deep the fire had already crawled beneath the floorboards of my life. By the time I arrived at the bank with Miller that afternoon, I'd memorized the forged signature better than my own. The conference room smelled like paper and denial. Frank, the branch manager, a man who looked like he golfed his conscience away years ago, studied the document, his brow twitching as he compared my ID to the signature. "This looks legitimate," he began carefully. Miller cut in, crisp and measured. "No, it doesn't. Compare the pressure points at the top loops. Whoever signed this dragged the pen from above, not from the side. Judy's real signature leans right. This leans left. Amateur work." Frank blinked, then sighed. "I'll need to escalate this." "Do it fast," I said, "because someone's playing dress-up with my identity, and the costume doesn't fit." He nodded, sweating. "We'll open an internal fraud case immediately." We walked out into the bright, heartless sun. Miller's tone softened. "You okay?" "I'm fine," I lied. Because truthfully, my pulse felt... That night, I couldn't sleep. I opened my credit report again, scrolling like a surgeon searching for hidden infection. Each page was a fresh wound. Another card, another inquiry, another name variation. Judith B. Beatty, J. L. Beatty, Judy Beatty. Each a ghost wearing my skin. I called Solstice Evans, and she picked up with her usual dry calm. "I was about to call you. You should sit down." "I'm already standing," I said. She didn't waste time. "The mortgage is just the surface. Total fraudulent exposure now clocks at about $300,000 across multiple cards, one investment account, and a line of credit under your Social Security number. Whoever's behind this knows enough to be dangerous, but not smart enough to stay invisible." I pressed my fingers to my temple. "That would be my brother's signature style." "There's more," she added. "Your retirement account was accessed. They bypassed two-factor authentication through a cloned phone number registered in your name." A chill rolled down my spine. "So they had to know enough to mimic my phone data." "Yes, which means family-level access. And one more thing. Your bar license was used on job applications. What? James Beatty applied to at least 3 legal assistant positions as you. Same resume, your photo, your credentials. The line went silent long enough for me to hear my heartbeat in the walls. He's not just burning your credit, I said. He's impersonating my career. Exactly. That crosses into felony impersonation and fraud. Miller, who was listening on speaker, muttered, He's basically carving your name into every crime scene. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Okay, we document everything. No contact until we have proof. And Solstice, whatever you find, trace it all. Already on it, she said. After the call, I just sat there in the dim light of my apartment. The city outside buzzed like nothing had changed, but my world was collapsing one password at a time. Ethan came over unannounced, holding a paper bag that smelled like basil and warmth. You haven't eaten, have you? I opened my mouth to protest, but he set the bag down and took my laptop away. Dinner, now. He watched me pick at the pasta like it was evidence. You need to let someone in, he said quietly. I can't afford comfort right now. It's not comfort, he said, it's fuel. And for one fragile moment, I believed him. 2 days later, Solstice texted, Need to talk, urgent, found something bad. I called immediately. She spoke fast. There's a company, Beatty Development Partners, LLC, registered 6 months ago under your name. Business address matches your parents' house. You're listed as managing partner. Your brother's the secondary signatory. They've been funneling private funds from a lending circle through it. My throat went dry. Funneling funds? As in fraud, yes. They've been pitching it at the country club, using your reputation as a lawyer to convince investors. The investors think you are the face of it. My hands trembled. Tell me you're joking. I wish I were. Miller's voice came over a speaker. We need to go to the bank again, this time with everything. But before we could, my phone buzzed with another notification, a text from my mom. We talked to the bank. They said they'll review things. Please don't make this public, Judy. It'll ruin James's future. Then, a few seconds later, another message. Also, don't blame your father. He just signed what he thought was paperwork for refinancing. You're overreacting. Overreacting. The word landed like a slap. I stared at the screen until the letters blurred. Ethan, watching me from the kitchen, asked, What did they say? They said it's my fault for not being quiet. We gathered that evening in Miller's office. Half evidence war room, half sanctuary. Solstice was on video. Papers spread around her like a cyberpunk angel of justice. I've connected the dots, she said, clicking through documents. The LLC, the fraudulent credit cards, the fake signatures, they're all part of the same web. But that's not even the worst part. Someone submitted a formal complaint to the bank this morning. I frowned. Complaint? Yes. Against you, Judy. Filed under your parents' names. They claim you forged their signatures and co-signed the mortgage yourself to make them look bad. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Miller whispered, They flipped it on you. The air left my lungs in a sharp exhale. They're framing me. Solstice nodded grimly. They're trying to build a narrative that you're the unstable one. It's clever. They're making it a family feud instead of a crime. Ethan swore under his breath. So what do we do now? We go on record, I said. My voice came out colder than I felt. Tomorrow I'm filing an official fraud escalation hearing at the bank. Miller, you're coming with me. Solstice, keep digging into that LLC. On it, she said. The next morning I walked into the W. Stoke branch again, head high, folder in hand. Frank looked startled to see me. Ms. Beatty, we were just about to call. Good, I interrupted. Then you can start your statement with this. I dropped the folder onto his desk. Every fraudulent document, every forged signature, every time my family decided my name was their personal line of credit. He thumbed through the pages, paling with every turn. This is extensive. Extensive is polite, Miller said. Try catastrophic. Frank cleared his throat. We'll be launching an internal review. Make it fast, I said, because your institution has been laundering lies through my name for half a year. He nodded shakily. Understood. I turned to leave, but stopped when Frank's assistant rushed in, whispering something in his ear. Frank looked up at me, uneasy. Ms. Beatty, your brother's here, in the lobby. Of course he was. I looked through the glass wall just in time to see James, hoodie and all, attempting to slip out the side exit. Let him go, I said. Are you sure? Miller asked. Yes, I said, gathering my folder. He just ran out of hiding places. Outside, the air felt cleaner than it had in days. For the first time, I wasn't chasing the truth. It was chasing them. But peace didn't last, because within hours, Solstice sent one final message. Judy, brace yourself. The fraud's deeper than we thought. Beatty Development wasn't just a fake business. It's part of a shell network, and one of the investors just filed a complaint with the police. I stared at the screen, pulse echoing in my ears. The appetizer was over. The main course was just being served. If fear had a smell, that week reeked of printer ink and stale coffee, the kind that stays on your hands no matter how many times you wash them. By the next morning, my phone was a minefield. Calls from the bank's fraud division, emails from credit bureaus, and one text from Mom. "You've made such a mess, Judy. They're calling us now. Why couldn't you just let this go?" Let it go. That was my family's favorite phrase. It meant pretend nothing happened until it ruined someone else. Miller and I met at his office, where he'd already set up what he called a damage board, a corkboard web of red strings and printed screenshots. "It's not just a few accounts," he said grimly. "Your brother and parents used your info to create multiple fronts, fake investments, false partners, even a dummy consulting firm tied to Beatty Development Partners." "Where's the money?" I asked. He pointed to a bank statement. "They pulled small amounts from private investors, pitched it as a real estate fund using your name as the guarantee. The transfers look clean, but they're using staggered withdrawals. Classic laundering pattern." I felt my throat tighten. "They used me to scam people." He nodded. "And they're still trying to cover it up." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed again. Unknown number. I answered. "Ms. Beatty?" a calm male voice said. "This is Detective Nolan with the Financial Crimes Unit. We've received a complaint from your parents. They're accusing you of financial fraud and elder abuse. They say you manipulated them into signing documents." I laughed so hard it came out like a choke. "You can't be serious." "I am," he said gently. "However, based on preliminary evidence, your story checks out differently. I'd like you to come in this afternoon and give a statement. Bring any documentation you have." "Detective," I said, voice trembling somewhere between fury and disbelief, "I have an entire case file." At the station, the fluorescent lights hummed like static. Detective Nolan was middle-aged, kind eyes, posture of a man who'd seen too many families devour each other over inheritance and lies. I handed him the folder, emails, PDFs, copies of the forged signatures, screenshots of every fraudulent application. "If my parents told you I manipulated them," I said, "then this will feel like whiplash." He scanned a few pages and gave a low whistle. "This is substantial." "Try federal." He nodded slowly. "We'll have to open a formal investigation. Given the dollar amounts and multiple victims, this might escalate to the FBI's Financial Crimes Division." That sentence landed heavy in the air. Might escalate to the FBI. For a moment, all I could do was stare at my reflection in the stainless steel table. I looked nothing like the woman who spent her days litigating contracts. I looked like someone learning, in real time, that family loyalty can be a crime scene. That night, Ethan met me outside the precinct, his coat draped over his arm. "You okay?" I nodded, though my eyes burned. They tried to frame me for elder abuse. He put a hand on my shoulder. "They're panicking. People do desperate things when they feel the truth closing in." "Yeah," I said, "but most people don't weaponize love letters and birth certificates." We drove home in silence. The city lights blurred past, clean, distant, untouchable. When I got to my apartment, Solstice was waiting on video call. "They're not done," she said, voice clipped. "Search warrants are coming. I've already spoken with a contact in financial crimes. They're fast-tracking this." "For my family?" I asked. "For their addresses." By morning, everything accelerated. The police raided my brother's apartment, confiscating laptops, USB drives, and a whiteboard covered in numbers and doodles of dollar signs. 2 hours later, they hit my parents' house. My mother texted me mid-raid. "How could you do this to us, Judy? They're tearing our home apart. You called them, didn't you?" I didn't respond. I couldn't. Instead, I went to Miller's office. Solstice joined via conference call. "The search confirmed what we suspected," she said. "They found boxes of documents from Beatty Development Partners, contracts, investor lists, even pitch decks claiming you were leading the firm. They also found a storage unit rented under your father's name." My head snapped up. "Storage unit?" "Yeah," she said. "They forgot to pay the rent. The facility manager opened it for the warrant. Guess what they found?" I braced myself. "Tell me." "Stacks of forged documents, multiple phones, and one very sad whiteboard with the words investors equals trust equals dollars written in marker. Despite everything, I almost laughed. A Ponzi scheme written in middle school math. "It's worse," Solstice said. There's also evidence they used your name to open offshore accounts. Cayman Islands, minor amounts, but enough to prove intent. They were preparing to funnel stolen funds abroad. Miller muttered, "That's wire fraud territory." "Exactly," she said. "And with your brother applying to jobs using your bar number, this officially qualifies as identity theft, impersonation, and organized financial crime." I rub my temples. "So what happens now?" "The FBI steps in. You'll need to testify as the primary witness. They'll want every detail." For a long moment, I just stared at the floor. Then I whispered, "I can do that." Later that evening, as I packed documents for the next round of interviews, a new email arrived from an unknown address titled Important Clarification. I clicked it open and froze. Attached was a PDF of a statement signed by my parents. It claimed I had forced them to co-sign the mortgage under pressure, that I abused family funds, and used emotional manipulation to control their finances. The signature looked real, but Solstice's quick analysis confirmed it was AI generated. Still, it was enough to stir the storm. Within hours, gossip threads in my hometown Facebook group lit up, Judy Beatty being investigated for fraud. They'd launched a counterattack through whispers and reputation. Ethan read the posts aloud, jaw tight. "They're trying to ruin you before the truth lands." I closed my laptop. "Let them. The truth doesn't need a PR team. It needs receipts." And I had every last one. 2 days later, Solstice called again, her voice clipped but triumphant. "Judy, they've officially filed search warrants on your brother's storage unit and your parents' home. Federal agents are involved. They'll seize everything. Phones, records, even the fake company accounts." I swallowed hard. "Is it bad that I feel relieved?" "No," she said. "It's called justice." The arrests came quickly after that. James first, caught behind a dumpster outside a Dave & Buster's, trying to run with a laptop bag full of investor data. Then my parents, quietly taken from their home in the early morning. Mom texted one last time before her phone was confiscated. "Please don't go to the media. We can explain everything." I stared at it for a long time, then finally typed back, "You had your chance. Now it's the government's turn." When the people you love hand your name to criminals, the only way out isn't forgiveness. It's exposure. And that exposure was about to light up a courtroom. The morning after their arrests, the city felt unnaturally still, as if the air itself was waiting for my next move. My phone wouldn't stop buzzing. News headlines sprouted like weeds. Local family accused of identity theft and fraud. Daughter listed as key witness. Every time I saw my own name in print, my stomach flipped. For years, I had worked to make that name mean competence, honesty, control. Now it was a headline, a hashtag, a courtroom exhibit. Miller and I sat across from Detective Nolan again, this time flanked by 2 federal agents from the Financial Crimes Unit. Solstice joined by video, her expression sharp and clinical. "Ms. Beatty," one agent began, "we've verified the fraudulent accounts and LLCs under your name. We've also uncovered investor complaints totaling nearly $400,000. Your family presented these ventures as backed by you, a licensed attorney. They even produced fake legal contracts." "Let me guess," I said quietly. "Signed with my name." He nodded grimly. "We also recovered evidence from the storage unit, fake IDs, investor brochures, and one document that explicitly references you as the face of the project." My throat tightened. I wanted to cry or laugh or both. "They didn't just steal from me," I said. "They used me to steal from everyone else." Nolan leaned forward. "We'll need you to testify once the indictment is filed. And Judy, this isn't just about identity theft anymore. It's racketeering, wire fraud, and securities manipulation. We're treating this as organized financial crime." Organized crime. I'd grown up with that word meaning mobsters in old movies, not my mother arranging dinner parties. I signed the witness paperwork with a shaking hand. As the pen touched the page, I realized it was the first signature of mine in months that no one had forged. That night, my apartment was quiet, almost eerily so. Ethan brought takeout again, the same pasta I couldn't eat last time. "Don't read the comments," he said softly, setting my phone face down. "You'll only hurt yourself." "I'm not reading them," I said. "I'm memorizing them. Every lie, every rumor, because someday someone's going to ask me how it felt, and I want to remember exactly how cruel people get when they think it's entertainment." He hesitated, then said, "You're not alone in this, you know." I looked up. That's the problem. I should have been able to say that about my family. A week later, my boss called me into her office. She was kind, painfully kind. Judy, the firm supports you, she said, but until this blows over, we'll have to temporarily suspend your caseload. Just optics. I nodded. Of course. She hesitated. You're one of the best lawyers we have, but right now, clients are nervous. I smiled the way you do when you're bleeding under your shirt. I understand. The elevator ride down felt endless. By the time the doors opened, I wasn't sure if I wanted to scream or sleep. That evening, Solstice called with an update that jolted me upright. The FBI traced new evidence. She said. Your brother's been sending anonymous emails to your firm's partners, claiming you orchestrated the fraud as revenge against your parents. He attached doctored screenshots of messages. Complete fakes. Unbelievable, I whispered. Oh, it gets worse, she continued. He even created a fake LinkedIn profile of attorney Judy Beatty, managing partner at Beatty Holdings. It lists half your real resume, mixed with lies about offshore deals and investor pitches. Miller swore under his breath. He's trying to destroy her credibility before the trial even starts. Not trying, I said coldly. He already has a strategy. Chaos. He's betting the system will get tired before I do. Solstice smiled faintly. Then he's never met a lawyer with your stamina. A few days later, the arraignment began. The courthouse lobby smelled like disinfectant and nerves. Reporters waited outside, snapping photos as James was led in, wrists cuffed, chin high like he thought this was a press tour. My parents followed, dressed in muted grays, their lawyer walking a half step ahead like a shepherd with two lost sheep. I sat behind the prosecutors, my badge clipped to my blazer. The judge read the list of charges: identity theft, wire fraud, false documentation, racketeering. Each word struck like a hammer. When the clerk asked for pleas, James spoke first. Not guilty, he said, voice steady, smile smug. Of course. My father echoed the same. My mother hesitated, glancing at me, then whispered, not guilty. Her voice cracked on the second word. Afterward, in the hallway, she approached me while the officers were distracted. Her hand trembled as she reached out. Judy, we never meant for this to go so far, she said, eyes glistening. We just thought you'd be okay. You always are. I stepped back. That's exactly why you did it, because you knew I'd survive it. Her lips parted, but I walked away before she could say another word. The next few weeks passed in a blur of legal prep, witness statements, and media noise. I barely slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my mother's hand hovering in the air, reaching, pleading, rehearsed. One night, Solstice called me unexpectedly late. They found more, she said. Offshore transfers, routed through an account under Beatty Family Holdings. They used your social security number as part of the authentication trail. I sat on the edge of my bed. So they built an empire of lies, with me as their foundation. Exactly, she said. And the foundation's fighting back. Her voice softened. Judy, I've worked a lot of cases like this, but I've never seen someone stand up to their entire family with this much composure. Don't lose that now. I wanted to tell her I was fine, that I was strong, but the truth was, I wasn't. Strength was just the costume I wore, so no one saw the collapse underneath. The morning of the preliminary hearing, I stood outside the courthouse. The cold air stung, sharp and honest. Miller adjusted my jacket. Ready? No, I admitted, but I'm here. Inside, the courtroom buzzed with low voices and shuffled papers. Reporters lined the back rows. When James entered, he looked directly at me, eyes gleaming with something between hatred and performance. As the judge took her seat, I felt the world shrink to the space between my heartbeat and the gavel. The prosecutor began. Your Honor, the state presents evidence that the defendants engaged in deliberate financial deception, using their daughter's identity to defraud investors and financial institutions. Every word was a nail in the coffin of the family name I'd once been proud of. I looked at James. He smiled faintly, the same smirk from childhood when he'd broken something and expected me to fix it. Not this time. Because I wasn't the fixer anymore. I was the evidence. And this was just the beginning of the reckoning. The trial began on a Wednesday morning that smelled like rain and photocopier toner. Reporters huddled outside the courthouse, whispering my name as though I were both victim and villain in the same breath. Inside, the air was tense enough to hum. James sat at the defense table, wearing a suit 2 sizes too tight. Still trying to convince the world he was the misunderstood genius in a story that had gone wrong. My parents sat behind him, fragile in posture but stubborn in pride. When the clerk called, the state versus James Beatty, Richard Beatty, and Elaine Beatty, a small tremor ran through me. Those names, my name, had been mine for 32 years, but hearing them in a courtroom felt like hearing ghosts. The prosecutor stood first. Your Honor, this case is about betrayal, about a family that used trust as currency and their daughter's identity as collateral. The defense lawyer rose, smooth, self-assured. Or perhaps, he said, this is about misunderstanding, family miscommunication, and overreaction. I almost laughed. Overreaction. My life had been dismantled down to the last decimal, but sure, family miscommunication. When it was my turn to testify, everything inside me slowed down. The courtroom noise faded. My own heels on the floor sounded distant, deliberate. I took the oath and sat in the witness box. Ms. Beatty, the prosecutor began, can you tell the court how this started? I nodded. With a voicemail, from a bank about a mortgage I never signed. I told them everything. The forged signature, the false mortgage, the credit cards, the shell companies, the way my brother had applied for jobs under my credentials. I didn't raise my voice once. I didn't have to. The evidence spoke louder than anger ever could. When the prosecutor asked about the moment I realized it was all orchestrated by my own family, I hesitated, just a heartbeat, before saying, when I saw my parents' names next to the company that carried mine. The jury didn't blink. The courtroom barely breathed. Then came Stan, the retired investor who had lost his savings in Beatty Development Partners. He walked slowly to the stand, a folder trembling in his hands. My wife and I trusted them, he said, voice thin but steady. We invested because Judy's name was on the documents. We thought she was managing the company. We believed it was safe. He looked at me with soft, weary eyes. I don't blame you, dear. You didn't know, but I want you to know. We believed in you. The words hit harder than any accusation, because belief, that's what my family had weaponized. When Stan left the stand, the prosecutor placed a printed email in front of the jury. My mother's. It read, don't worry. Judy's reputation gives us cover. We'll pay the investors once new money comes in. There it was, written proof of a Ponzi scheme, signed with affection and audacity. The defense looked like they wanted the ground to swallow them. Then it was cross-examination. The defense lawyer adjusted his tie and approached me. Ms. Beatty, he said with feigned sympathy, isn't it true that you once shared a joint account with your parents? Yes, I replied, when I still believed they'd never use it against me. A few quiet chuckles rippled through the courtroom. Even the judge hid a smirk. He tried again. You're known to be detail-oriented, aren't you? That's one word for it. So, is it possible you simply missed some of these transactions? Possible? I tilted my head. Sure. Just like it's possible you tripped and accidentally forged 15 legal documents in my name. The courtroom broke into laughter. The judge tapped her gavel for order, but the jury was smiling. The defense lawyer sighed and sat down. During a recess, I stood in the hallway, staring at the vending machine. The fluorescent light hummed, my reflection fractured in the glass. That's when I felt someone approach behind me. Judy. It was Mom. Her eyes were red, her voice small. We never meant to hurt you. We thought it would all work out. We thought... I turned slowly. You thought I'd clean it up, like always. Her lip trembled. You don't understand. Your brother needed help. No, Mom, I said softly. He needed consequences. She reached out as if to touch my arm, but I stepped back. Please don't, I whispered. You've taken enough from me already. For the first time in my life, she had no response. By the final day of testimony, the courtroom felt like a sealed vault of truth and exhaustion. James was called to the stand. He strutted up, chin high, still convinced he could talk his way out of anything. I didn't mean to hurt her, he said, gesturing vaguely toward me. Judy's always been the favorite. She had everything. The job, the money, the respect. I just wanted to build something, too. The prosecutor leaned forward. So you built a fake company with your sister's name? James smirked. You call it fake. I call it ambitious. The gallery murmured. The judge's expression hardened. The prosecutor dropped the final piece of evidence, a whiteboard photo from the storage unit. Investors equal trust equals $1,000, written in his handwriting. The silence that followed was surgical. Closing statements came next. The prosecutor's voice carried the weight of every sleepless night I'd lived through. This case isn't about revenge, he said. It's about accountability. Ms. Beatty didn't bring this to court to destroy her family. They did that themselves when they decided her name was worth more than her trust. The defense tried to counter with talk of familial misunderstanding, pressure, and emotional turmoil. But by then, the jury had already made up their minds. You could feel it in the room, that shift when outrage turns to certainty. When the judge called for adjournment, my knees finally gave a quiet tremor. Miller caught my arm. "That was it," he whispered. "They heard you." "I just hope they believed me," I said. "They didn't just believe you," he replied. "They saw the truth standing on 2 feet." Outside, the sky had opened up, raining lightly against the courthouse steps. Stan was waiting with his wife. He smiled and said, "You did good, kiddo." I nodded, too tired to speak. Sometimes justice doesn't roar, it just exhales. And as the rain hit my skin, I realized I didn't feel angry anymore, just empty. But maybe emptiness was what healing looked like before it started to fill again. Tomorrow would be sentencing. And I'd finally find out what my family's lies were truly worth. The courthouse smelled like floor wax and nerves, the kind of smell that stays with you long after justice has been served. I sat in the front row beside Miller, my fingers locked together, the paper edges of my statements soft from being folded too many times. "Big day," Miller murmured. I nodded. "I just want it to be over." The bailiff's voice cut through the buzz. "All rise." The judge entered, calm, deliberate, the kind of presence that could quiet thunder. James stood between his lawyers, eyes darting to the jury box as if he could charm them one last time. My parents sat 2 rows behind him, hands clasped, faces pale and rehearsed. The judge shuffled the sentencing documents. "This court finds the defendants guilty on all counts: identity theft, wire fraud, racketeering, and impersonation of a licensed attorney." My heart pounded, not from triumph, but from disbelief. After everything, all the lies, all the chaos, it was finally official. James went first. He tried for swagger, straightening his tie as if that might save him. His lawyer painted him as a misguided entrepreneur who had made mistakes in pursuit of validation. The judge wasn't buying it. "Mr. Beatty, you deliberately falsified documents, stole identities, and defrauded multiple individuals, including your sister, whose career you attempted to destroy. You have shown no remorse, only arrogance." She paused. "You are sentenced to 18 years in federal prison." James blinked, stunned. His shoulders sagged, and for once he didn't have a smart remark. My father, Richard Beatty, was next. The court played a recording of his voice from the seized files. "Judy's too successful for her own good. This way, we all win." The words hit harder hearing them again, louder, official. The judge's voice was sharp but even. "You enabled this fraud. You advised your son. You benefited from stolen money. You used your daughter's name as a shield." She looked down at her papers. 15 years. Dad didn't flinch, didn't look at me, didn't blink. He just clenched his jaw, the same expression he used to give when the TV remote was out of batteries. Then came my mother. She stood trembling, clutching tissues like confession cards. Her lawyer pleaded for leniency. My client acted out of maternal instinct and naivety. She never fully understood the legal ramifications. The judge didn't smile. "Ignorance is not innocence, Mrs. Beatty." She continued. "The emails you sent show clear intent. You wrote, 'We'll handle the investors. Judy's reputation gives us cover.' That was not naivety. That was calculation." Mom's voice cracked. "Please, Your Honor, I just wanted my family to survive." The judge lowered her gaze. "At the expense of your daughter's life." 12 years. When the gavel fell, the sound echoed like a closing door, one that would take a long time to open again. Outside, I didn't feel victorious. I felt weightless, like I'd finally stopped holding my breath after months underwater. Stan approached me, gentle as always. "I just wanted to thank you," he said, voice thick with emotion. "You stood up to them when the rest of us couldn't." I managed to smile. "You deserve better than what they did to you." "So did you," he said softly. Then he hugged me, a simple, human thing I hadn't realized I'd missed. Weeks passed. Life slowed down to something almost normal. The news cycle moved on. The reporters stopped calling, and for the first time in nearly a year, my name wasn't tied to a scandal. I moved apartments, changed my number, and started volunteering at a nonprofit that helps victims of financial exploitation. I met people who had been scammed by relatives, partners, even adult children, stories that all began with trust and ended with signatures. One woman, trembling, showed me a forged check from her sister. "I don't even know how to start," she whispered. I handed her a pen. "You start by taking back your name." A few months later, a letter arrived from James. Prison mail, thin and handwritten. "Judy, I know you probably hate me, but you've always been the fixer. Maybe when I get out, you can help me start over. I want to rebuild, with your guidance this time. I read it twice. It was half apology, half manipulation, and 100% familiar. I folded it once, twice, slid it into the shredder. Because I wasn't the fixer anymore. That night, I sat on my balcony with a cup of tea, and the city lights sprawled beneath me, like constellations drawn by chaos. My phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. How are you feeling tonight? I typed back peaceful, for the first time. Then another message. You did it, Judy. I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. No, I just stopped letting them do it to me. The shredder hummed quietly in the background. Soft, steady, final. And in that sound, I realized something simple but profound. Some justice doesn't look like revenge. It looks like silence. It looks like sleeping through the night without dreaming of forged signatures. It looks like waking up, saying your own name, and knowing it still belongs to you.